Welcome to the Across the Spoilerverse podcast. Your boys are back. It's Tuesday. We're ready to drop some news, talk about everything we missed last week. Because in case you guys didn't see, just everything got brought crumbling down after last week's episode, and we were sitting like, oh, if we'd only recorded it the day later, we'd have so much more to talk about. But there's lots of things to go over. I'm joined once more by Greg Alba from Real Rejects. Yeah, you've had a bit of a fun week. It went a bit swift for you, I heard there, Greg.
Oh man, was it swifty for me, buddy. I had a great time. I even got my bracelets on today, buddy. I had a wonderful time. I've asked Paul permission. He's granted me permission. I wrote him a letter and everything, allowing me to review the Taylor Swift concert experience, the Eras Tour, because it was an experience, that's for sure. So that's one of the many things we got to talk about today, because you're right, man. We had a lot that came out. There'll be video chapters if you guys want to hop around, because we got stuff to talk about with Daredevil. Oh, man, that just kept developing. A Marvel Box Office, Aquaman 2. Oh, boy. And SAG Aftra, Halloween rights, Willow. Man, there's a whole bunch to get to, my friend. But you had a wedding you went to. How was it? Did you have a good time?
I got really drunk, too drunk, and fell on the floor when I got in and just slept there for a bit. So that was pretty fun.
Wow.
I mean, we've got another wedding coming up very soon. Looking forward to it. Just living the life, watching people get happy lives themselves and get to be with the person they love. Now, it sounded like, on the day, it sounded like it was going to be a match made in heaven and these people were going to be together forever, which kind of takes us into our first section, which is talking about what's going on with Marvel at the moment. In case you guys have missed the headlines, there's been a number of crazy reports all hitting the web this week. We've had things like the Marvels opening weekend predictions. Joanna Robinson's just dropped a really interesting book talking about all the behind-scenes stuff on Marvel. And we've heard lots of things about what's going on with Daredevil. Now, I'm going to say, I know I keep talking about how I feel Marvel's gone off track recently and stuff. I'm really enjoying Loki season 2. I've just the other day finished watching episode 3. I really enjoyed it. In case you guys don't know, we do get sent them early. Well, the first
few.
We're getting some of them. You don't normally tend to get them, the more important episodes given to you. But yeah, the first handful, and I have to say, I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's kind of striking the right balance with me in terms of what I want tonally, where it takes itself serious, but it has jokes in. It's not written to be a comedy, and it's got lots of exciting things that happen in it. Like, there's a certain thing that we found out about months ago through a certain post-credit scene in the film, and I thought it was going to go one way and play out like that, just given my predictions on it. And watching the way they did it, yeah, complete surprise. And it's nice when you feel like you have such an understanding of the comics and the characters, and they just throw a couple of curveballs your way and keep things moving.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just saw episode 3 myself, and what I like so much about what this season is, everything feels consistently tethered, I would say, yet each one does feel different from the other. Like when you're looking at the 3 episodes, while the direction is consistent and while the darkness is consistent, each one does feel distinct from one another, and it does go in directions you often wouldn't expect. Personally, episode 1 is still my favorite of the 3 we've seen so far. And I think when you say that, that just means like, oh, does that mean you don't like episode 2 and 3? No, that's not it at all. I really like episode 2. I like episode 3 more than I like episode 2. That's for sure. And I feel like episode 3 is going to be a conversation. I imagine there'll be like little things here or there that people might have some gripes with, because they definitely get weird. They definitely like weird in a way that I imagine, like a little quirky in a way that I don't imagine.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I'm hinting at. It would be a spoiler, even though it's not like a big deal if I even said what it is.
It would be a major spoiler.
Major spoiler. You did it, Paul. You did it. But no, I think it's still. I wish. Apparently, it's like the second most watched thing ever, or whatever the numbers are saying. But it doesn't seem to be reflecting. I don't know. Disney has a way of spinning numbers together in creative ways.
Well, so yeah, they dropped the viewing figures earlier in the week, and they talked about how it was the second highest viewed premiere of the year, sitting behind The Mandalorian. I think it came in at about 10 million views.
Okay.
But then I'm thinking, well, Ahsoka, they said it was 14 or
14,
15
15,
million.
yeah.
They did go back and forth on the numbers with that. So I'm thinking, well, how is this unless they're counting those 2 episodes as like the combined
I
view
think
count,
that's
which
what they're doing.
I'm guessing they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, but there has been a slight dip, and obviously there's been a lot of panic behind the scenes as we've just found out a major reshuffle that's happened with Daredevil Born
Oh, yeah.
Again. So the Hollywood Reporter, they dropped an insane story talking about how much things have been reworked, and what's basically happened is the writers' strike obviously stopped everything, so they couldn't really announce it during that time. But when the writers all got back together, apparently everyone connected to the writing side, and I think it was even the showrunners, they all got brought in to Marvel, or they might not even been brought in, just told, look, we're restarting again. We're everyone's fired. We're going in a different direction. We don't feel like it's working. So, according to the Hollywood Reporter, they've shot fewer than half of the series' 18 episodes. So, less than 9, but still quite up there. But Kevin Feige, he has reviewed the footage and come away with a clear-eyed assessment that the show wasn't working. Now, we heard some rumors of things like Daredevil wasn't going to show up in costume until episode 4. There's also been things come out saying that Foggy was killed in the first episode off camera,
Oh,
and
God.
just yeah, insane.
That would be
So
so upsetting.
yeah, so they will apparently be using some of the footage from what they shot and kind of working it into certain storylines. And if they've got an action scene and they want to have a fight, they're like, well, we'll just do that. But yeah, they've basically brought them all in and said that in general, they've realized that the TV side of Marvel isn't working. And what they had done is basically, instead of getting showrunners, they would just get head writers. They wouldn't create pilots or stuff like that. And the old television model that's worked for decades and decades, they just thought, we don't need to do that. We'll just make basically 6 hour long movies and chop them up.
Yeah.
And I think you can kind of tell that when you're watching the Marvel shows. Like, if I've always felt like it's like watching a movie, but the filler scenes are left in, where normally you'd be like, "Oh, we can cut this bit, we can cut this bit." They're kind of like, "Well, we need to fill up time for these 6 episodes, so leave all that stuff in." And yeah, Marvel have just hit a point where they realized that it's not working out, and apparently, so far they've spent $150 million on the show, and they didn't hire showrunners. They depended on film executives to run the series, and yeah, it's just kind of hit the point where they realize like it's not working. We need to start again.
Yeah.
Which I know everyone's spinning it like, oh, it's terrible. But
Yeah.
I actually think Daredevil being a complete disaster behind the scenes is a good thing that they've realized that. And studios often get criticized for not listening to fans. Like Lucasfilm's a perfect example of that, where it's like Kathleen Kennedy will announce a slate of films and they're like, we're telling you we don't want this and you're still going ahead with it. I actually really respect Marvel and have faith in them that they're not blaming fans for stuff failing. They're not saying like, you guys are ruining the universe we created for you. They're saying we've made mistakes, we're doing it wrong, let's just
Yeah.
start again. And clearly they realize how important of a character that Daredevil is, because those Netflix shows especially, they need to at least match them in terms of quality. Those first 2 Daredevil seasons are classics. And I think that if they don't do that, they're going to get so much backlash. So I actually feel good about this.
You said those first 2 Daredevil seasons? You don't like the third?
I think 3, no, 3 is really good as well. That's with Bullseye in,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I
Yeah.
love 3.
I watched all of them quite recently. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I gotta say, when we were first talking about this a few days ago, I was messaging you going, I didn't realize Marvel TV didn't have a showrunner. That is such an essential quality to me, and it just kind of clicked for me right then and there, because a head writer does not equate to show. Like, you can have a head writer without a showrunner apparently, and a showrunner really helps with everything, like the overall creative vision, helping to map out an entire season, and they get a lot of other things in order as well. Like the task can very much vary from casting to production planning to all kinds of problem solving, but they are the real leader when it comes to a show. Think like a Vince Gilligan for Breaking Bad, for example, or on a comedy like a Tina Fey or Chuck Lorre for Two and a Half Men. You know, there's a whole bunch of different types of showrunners out there, but they're involved with like the editing and the post production. And it really did seem like when we talk about committee made, that term that's often going around with Marvel, you could really feel that with a lot of the TV shows. That I'm surprised that without a showrunner, because they've had good directors and good head writers, I'm surprised that they've managed to still, at the end of the day, deliver some really great shows regardless. I mean, I know a lot of them can be misses, but I think that it kind of makes more sense now why a lot of the time the conversation around many of the TV shows would be, it started off great, but then by the time it got to the end, I don't know, it just didn't stick the landing. It just didn't quite get there. And I think a showrunner would really aid in making sure the vision overall is met and you could plan out for something bigger, because it seemed like before, like Loki season 2 is the first show to have a season 2. We know we got What If season 2 coming up, but that's a little bit more like anthology. While connected, it's still a little bit more anthology, where Loki season 2 is very much a serialized narrative. And now I think they'd be planning to have multiple seasons for stuff. Like I think Daredevil Born Again, I've heard reports that they wanted to do 18 episodes for his first season. Then I heard that they actually wanted to make it 2 seasons with 9 episodes. Regardless, it's not just dividing up a movie. Like they really have to think about the television viewer engagement. And that's where a showrunner really does become essential, especially for the long-term planning. And I'm surprised they haven't had it before. I'm glad they're doing it now. And I do agree with you. While it's a bummer for those who did put in the work, while it's a bummer for their work not being able to get canned, and maybe if they were more popular people, like when Lord and Miller got fired from Solo, we're like, no. And maybe there'd be more of an outrage towards that if we were if we really knew the credentials of the people involved. This still does speak more volumes to the fact that they are reevaluating, they are reflecting on the response that things have been, and knowing that Kevin Feige himself was like, look, things have got to change. Like it comes down to more than just numbers. A lot of it does come down to audience reception, of course. And now we can really get things back on track. When you're dealing with shows, it's different than a movie, regardless. Even though the MCU, the films themselves have been like a television series in its own way, actually doing a TV series is very different. And I do agree with you, because Daredevil is, especially out of them all, is the one that's being resurrected or being born again. And there's a lot more weight to it, because it's going to be compared to what it did on Netflix. And you're right, it has to at least, bottom line, be as good, distinguish itself, but also be as good as the Netflix one was, because that, out of all the Netflix shows, that is easily the one that's held in the highest regard. And to this day, it's still my favorite MCU series of all of them. For me, it personally does outrank Loki, like out of all of them. So yeah, I think it has to be great, and I love Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio and stuff. So I hope it does. I hope they nail it. I hope they nail it.
And what I've been basically researching over the weekend when I haven't been lying on the floor face down drunk is all of the kind of stuff that Marvel tend to do post-production wise. So Joanna Robinson, I think Ryan knows her quite well. I'm sure she's appeared on Screen Crush a couple of times. She basically put out an MCU book called The Reign of Marvel Studios. It was a very much, she's done so much good research. There were other authors involved, but she's been on the Watch podcast talking about it and kind of going in some of the insane stuff that Marvel were doing. So they basically brought up how it's not as planned out as it seems, and even things like Thanos, he wasn't supposed to appear at the end of the Avengers, and Joss Whedon was actually the one who put that idea forward, and Marvel were apparently so tired of fighting that they just went, yeah, whatever. And then as they started to develop it, they realized, oh, we've got Infinity Stones kind of dotted about the MCU, we can bring them all together. And he was also talking about the process that Marvel do filming, which sounds absolutely insane. So they don't have a finished script when they go to shoot. They'll make all the scenes, but they'll have scheduled reshoots and know that stuff's coming down the line. And then they'll get those pieces, present them to Kevin Feige, who'll watch them and say, okay, we need to fill in this character bit, we need to fill in that character bit, we need to tie these plot threads together. And then they'll then go off and reshoot all the stuff in those reshoots to kind of tie it all together, which is absolutely mental. So they don't sit down with a finished script or anything. It's kind of, let's film lots of different bits, give it to Kevin Feige, who then give us feedback, and we'll then go put it together. And basically the Hollywood Reporter says that, you know, they have a whole fix it in post attitude, which makes it feel like a director doesn't matter. And that's a quote that's come from one person familiar with the process. And it says, as shows ramped up during the pandemic, Marvel stepped outside its usual staffing approach and brought in outside execs after years of internally promoting creatives who'd been sufficiently trained in the Marvel method. And apparently this change was felt the most severely on Secret Invasion, as they had Kyle Bradstreet, who had worked on Mr. Robot. He'd been doing lots of scripts for Secret Invasion for about a year, and then he was abruptly replaced after Marvel decided to go in a different direction. And they then got Brian Tucker involved, who penned the crime thriller Broken City. And it sounds like they were just chopping and changing things behind the scenes so much. Now, we had heard rumors that basically half of Secret Invasion had been refilmed. There was a direction that they were going in, and they ended up scrapping it and bringing new people in and doing it in a completely different direction. And we've seen how that worked out with that series. I felt it had really strong. I mean, I remember being on the podcast when we were talking about the reception to it, and we've been like, we've seen the first couple of episodes and they're great. We don't understand why everyone hates it. And then, yeah, you can kind of see where it all fell apart. And it just sounds like they've hit a point where they realize it's damaging the brand. They're not putting out, you know, they're putting out okay things, but it's not as good as it could be. And you know, over time, if you keep putting out mid project after mid project, not only does it not get you interested in the characters involved in it, it's also the MCU as a whole, where you kind of like, oh, I don't really care about where this is going anymore. It went from something that felt like you had to watch it to understand what was coming and you were enjoying it, to something where it's like, well, I'm not enjoying it that much and I don't really care where this is going and I don't even know where it's going. So yeah, I feel like they tried to catch lightning in a bottle twice and format it for TV, and it's just not worked out. But hearing this, it makes me feel like I'm glad they realized that, you know what I mean? As much as I'm kind of, we're bashing on them and saying how bad it is, I would much rather a studio was self-aware enough to the point where it's like, yeah, we need to sort this out, mate. We can't just keep doing the same old crap. Because they could easily just sit up, you know, run this thing into the ground and not really care and just keep knocking out series after series. But I'm glad they're doing what they're doing. And though it might come across as we're bashing on them, I personally think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything that you said, and I do hope that they can kind of revisit that lesson that happened with Thanos, because that is, I think one of the terminologies for it is called process of discovery. You know, the like I just brought up Vince Gilligan with Breaking Bad, and one of the big stories about that was the initial plan was to kill off Jesse Pinkman in the first season, in the first few episodes, to elevate Walter White's story. And as they were writing him and as they were watching Aaron Paul's performance, they were like, no, we got to keep him. Like, it completely went against the showrunner's Bible, the original Bible for it, because they discovered something else. And that's essentially kind of what happened with, you know, Thanos as well. Like, the response happened, they saw an opportunity, and from the outside looking in, you would think that was the plan the entire time. Whenever we talk about, like, what's this multiverse saga's plan? Where is Phase 4 and 5 truly all headed? Like, we know it's headed to Secret Wars, and it's still somehow it doesn't feel as focused, even though we know that it's headed to stuff like King Dynasty and Secret Wars. Yet the focus feels a little bit off. And I think having that creative ingenuity where you can have a little bit of freedom for discovery, which is, again, allowing a little bit more of your creative input with your writers. Like you were telling me about the Moon Knight head writer quitting halfway through the series production. Kate Herron, she did not return. While I like the directors and what Loki season 2 is doing, They wanted to go a different direction, and she did not return for Loki season 2, even though she directed like all of Loki season 1. So there can be a lot of these creative problems, and I think right now there needs to be a little bit more synergy and also communication and understanding, because it just seems too apparent. We've probably beat this point to death a billion times by now, of how a lot of the times, like, everything needs to be connected, but people working on this project aren't aware of what's really going on in this project, and yet things need to be connected. And Kevin Feige doesn't want to reveal anything, so he's got to like have his little secret meetings and be like, include this. And a lot of times people are going, I don't know why we have to include this, but we have to include it because Kevin Feige said to do it. And I think having more people involved and on board, we need to embrace the creativity once again. And I think it's kind of funny. It's like a snake eating its own tail in a way. Of
an Ouroboros,
yes, of course, great job there. Is how, when the MCU, like, I really think that Thanos moment is so definitive of a plan mixed with creative opportunities allowing a door to open. It's like a perfect point. And then when you see like other people try to start cinematic universes and how much they failed because they're like trying to plan everything out and like, here's what everything is supposed to be. And while you need a plan, because Star Wars trilogy went the complete opposite direction, and you need a plan to sort of be like a guideline in a way, and not necessarily scripture, but a guideline. And I think Marvel kind of fell into the trap that other people were also doing, but they were also kind of just throwing shit at the wall and going, let's see what else sticks, because people will eat up anything. We're the MCU, we're impenetrable. And that's clearly not the case anymore, especially when you're hearing about shit like what's going on with the Marvels box office projections, which is not surprising. It's not surprising what's going on.
No, so the initial box office projections have it opening to anywhere between 50 to 75 million, meaning that it would, if it hits below 55 million, then it'll officially be the lowest opening weekend for an MCU film ever, even lower than the Incredible Hulk back in the day when Marvel was first getting its feet wet. That was made by Universal as well. So to come in lower than that, it kind of spells what the state of the MCU is like at the moment. And, it's an opening projection. It might change. People might end up, closer to the time. But what tends to happen is that the analysts of this, who we talk about every week on the podcast, they'll look at how other films have performed. They'll then judge the interest on pre-ticket sales, use their own algorithms and stuff to kind of work out a figure where it will realistically fall. Grace Randolph, I was listening to her the other week on Beyond the Trailer. She was saying that she'd heard that the pre-ticket sales were around the area of The Flash, and that's basically made Marvel completely panic. And then when this projection came out, it was kind of like, oh crap, that sounds really bad. So it's difficult to kind of guess, because again, people might just, an advert for them might hit and they might go, oh, you know what, I am going to go see it, and they might buy tickets. However, they might be put off, and I kind of feel like it is going to struggle at the box office. I think superhero fatigue, I know that's a buzzword, but I think in general we've seen this year that films on the whole have been underperforming, and I don't think necessarily it's Captain Marvel or the Marvel's fault. I think in general at the moment there's kind of a feeling around comic book movies that they're all sort of the same at the moment. There's nothing really massively differentiating them. And bar Across the Spider-Verse, yeah, we can wait until this stuff hits streaming, or do we even need to see it? You know what I mean? I think that first Captain Marvel movie, it hit it hit at the right time. It hit perfectly. And though, I don't think in a vacuum, I don't think Captain Marvel would have been $1 billion movie. But what happened was people cared so much about Endgame and what they thought they needed to see in order to understand that film that they just went out in droves and went to see it. And I know people are suggesting changing the title to Captain Marvel 2. But I mean, Birds of Prey, they tried that strategy with it when they changed it from Birds of Prey to Harley Quinn. And I think people are aware enough of it at the point where it's, changing the Marvels to Captain Marvel 2 isn't going to make a massive difference. And people who are already interested in this stuff, they're going to know it's coming out. And I feel at the core of this is just a thing that people it's smacking you over the head, and people just seem to avoid it and come up with loads of reasons why stuff's failing. But the bottom line is, people just don't care.
Yeah.
And that's why we're getting flops like Dial of Destiny, the recent DC EU movies, and the low projections for the Marvel is because people just don't care enough to go out and see it. Batman, yeah, though we've had 400 movies about Batman or whatever, people care about Batman. So any Batman movie that comes out, people are like, I care about Batman, I'm going to see it. And in the case of this, I just don't think, the studios are selling you the idea with these films why you should care. Like, there's not, even in the Marvels trailer, there's not really that money shot to make you think, oh crap, you know what I mean? And the fact they're not building up to something as well, and we're all kind of lost. I know Secret Wars is coming, but you can't really figure out how this ties into it. It's kind of like, why do I have to care enough about this film to go out and see it? And I just don't feel like they're hitting that home run. And it, caring about stuff is solely the reason that studios buy up old IPs, because it's easier to make a sequel or a requel or a reboot of a franchise that people already care about than to try and get them to care about something that they've never seen before. And we've seen that in the case of the creator. And you need that hook. You need that hook with a movie where people are hooked into it and they want to go out and see it. Oppenheimer is the perfect example. Directed by any other person in Hollywood, there's no way that movie comes close to making anywhere near $1 billion. It's a black and white biopic about a historical figure making the atom bomb. It doesn't have like fights. It's not an action movie. It's 3 hours long. It's it's not something on paper that you would think, if you give this to any director, it's going to make anywhere close to that amount of money. But people care about what Christopher Nolan's doing next. They really want to see it. It's the same with James Cameron. People care about that director. And so when they hear about that movie coming, they're going to go out and see it. And I think studios just need to remember, make us care about it, because at the moment, it doesn't feel like even they care that much. Like, I've not really seen that much marketing for it. I've seen a couple of posters and stuff, but where's the sell to make me go, oh, I need to see the Marvels?
We're going to talk about the SAG strike in a little bit. And this is one of those movies because they have three different, they have a crossover of these three different personalities coming to the big screen together from three different properties: WandaVision, Captain Marvel, and Miss Marvel, where I'm like, oh, I do think if the SAG strike was over, the promotion of, because sometimes you're like, the promotion of the actors probably doesn't really matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I think for this, it would have actually made a dent. I think it could have helped elevate the box office, because the main thing that, if you watch the trailers for this, the main thing that I have is like, yeah, it looks somewhere between fine to fun. You know what I mean? Like it looks fun. It looks fun. I'll give it that. It doesn't look great to me or groundbreaking by any stretch, but the best thing I can say about it, and I think what a lot of people will say is, yeah, it looks fun. And that's something that a lot of people just kind of want, is I just want a fun movie. The thing, though, is just fun is not enough to get people in the seats for theaters anymore, especially for a comic book movie. I think we all know that. The box office reports for so many of the superhero movies and shit, and even some of the viewer numbers on some of these things, it's a testament to all that. You need it to feel a little bit special. So fun isn't just going to cut it anymore. So I feel like, yeah, maybe it might not do well in theaters, and a lot of people might just have the mentality of just waiting for it to come out on Disney Plus or video on demand. And I think if you really want to sell people on fun, what really would have helped is if you do a bunch of those interviews with, the three of them just having a ball together and really promoting the shit out of this movie as just a genuine blast of a film. And I think that would have made a difference. So I really think, while they're not competing with Dune, there's really not much competition for that. I don't really know what they're even.
The Hunger Games is out.
is not the same weekend
Hunger
though,
Games is
right?
coming out.
It's in the same month.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the weekend
Okay.
after. But I mean, that's gonna cause a drop. These
Yeah.
films tend to do that number first weekend, and then roughly it's about a 60%
Yeah.
second weekend drop. So dropping down from that, it's going to really, really have a difficult time, especially with that Hunger Games film, which I don't know if that's going to do that well. I'm in the same problem with that, where I'm just not sure if they're selling Why We Should Care. And obviously, not having the actors on board, that's a major problem. But even still, I don't feel that the movie would knock it out of the park. I could never see it grossing close to $1
Oh
billion
God, no.
like that first Captain Marvel did.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
looking at numbers right now, and I just realized Black Widow that opened at $80 million, and that was during the pandemic, where they also had the option where you could just buy it on Disney Plus and watch it that way. So if this opens under Black Widow, that's a really, really, really bad sign, because it is technically a sequel to Captain Marvel, which was $1 billion hit. But I don't know. I mean, if you change it to Captain Marvel 2, it still doesn't even though Captain Marvel's in it, it still doesn't feel like a Captain Marvel 2 to me, at least with what the trailers are doing. It's like a continuation of everyone's story from what we saw in WandaVision, Miss Marvel, and Captain Marvel. So I don't feel like it
yeah,
would be accurate to call it. It would be like calling Captain America Civil War Captain America 3. Like, you needed that subtitle to it, where you're like, it's a Captain America 3, but it's not just a sequel to Winter Soldier, even though in a lot of ways it was just
yeah.
a sequel to Winter Soldier, for Captain America story. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's got to uphill.
Yeah, you also have it coming. I mean, Ms. Marvel. I really enjoy Ms. Marvel. I think it's like got a 98% rating on
Mhm.
Rotten Tomatoes, but we know the viewing figures haven't been there. It's sort of a sequel to Secret Invasion as
Mhm.
well because of the Nick Fury stuff, and we know there's going to be elements of the scrolling and meeting with the Kree for a peace summit or whatever it is. So it's kind of a sequel to that, and they're not the best foundation to build sequels on. And obviously, Ms. Marvel, again, really like it, but the viewership wasn't there. Secret Invasion didn't have good viewership, and I think it's the lowest rated MCU show. So it's gonna be
Definitely.
it's difficult. It has got its work set out for it. It might do well, might hit people at the right time. They're looking for a fun film, but I just feel like the comic book movies at the moment, they need just a bit more to them than just this fun, wacky stuff. Because even with Marvel, we've seen how that's not really been working that well in the likes of Thor: Love and Thunder, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They
Yeah.
get sold as fun, wacky movies, and we've almost been let down too many times by that style of thinking from the studio. Like, they came out and apparently said that they thought Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was going to be a banger, and they were really surprised when people didn't like it. And it's like your internal barometer's off a bit, mate, if you think that the audience who likes Infinity War, Endgame, Winter Soldier, first Iron Man movie, if they thought that was going to be something they'd really, really enjoy. So yeah, bit of a strange time at the studio. Apparently Wonder Man's been cancelled as well. I think they're just having a big overhaul, which again we're slagging them off, but it's for the best in the long run. I think personally, I can see it working out well if they're just self-aware of things like we do all the time as well. We'll do a series of videos and be like, that didn't quite
Yeah.
have the desired effect I wanted, and it's time to just scrap the entire podcast and do something else because it ain't working. Especially that co-host who everyone wants dead.
I don't know what you're talking about. What do
Yeah, just nothing. So moving on to more fun stuff. Aquaman 2, geez, it's had one of the worst. Like, if you thought Marvel's PR was bad at the moment, you haven't heard anything yet. This is genuinely one of the worst things of PR that I've ever seen a studio have to deal with before films coming out. And there was a massive report dropped by Variety last week talking about how Aquaman 2 was flooded with drama. Jason Momoa allegedly was drunk on set. Amber Heard had all her scenes cut. Elon Musk apparently had to step in and write a letter. He should have sent an X. He wrote a letter to WB saying, I'm going to destroy the entire studio if you don't give Amber Heard a role in Aquaman 2. And yeah, insane, Greg. What are your thoughts? We'll go through it bit by bit, but what are your thoughts? Is it Is it gonna be a good movie? Is it gonna do
This is a
well?
disaster. Honestly, it makes me want to watch the movie even more. Like I thought the trailer was fine. We've talked about it that it looked like it didn't feel like that different from the first movie to me. But this just makes me go. I'm actually hoping it's a bit of a disaster because they've already come out and said, at least according to this article, right, that none of the original Justice League members are returning. That includes Jason Momoa as Aquaman. He's not coming back. So they're just doubling down on making this feel more um, non-essential. And I think this
Yeah.
was this lines up with some. Didn't Amber Heard say something along the lines of what was here like during the trials of like they try to get her fired and shit, and now Jason, like I've heard these rumors before. I feel like this is just more. I don't know if it's exactly confirmation, but it's resurrected information that seems like there's more to it than there was prior.
So what happened was on the day that the Aquaman trailer dropped, Johnny Depp fans or someone connected to them who basically crowdfunded this, they paid for the release of documents from Amber Heard's therapist, Dr. Dawn Hughes, and they've kind of
Jesus.
went through all these notes, talked about, it's basically what the therapist has jotted down about what Amber Heard said is happening on the
Oh,
set of
that's
Aquaman.
horrible.
So apparently, Jason Momoa wanted her fired, and we did hear about this during the trial.
Yeah,
I think Walter Hamada had a big thing where he talked about how they were going to fire Amber Heard because she just didn't have the
the chemistry.
chemistry,
Yeah,
and then they were kind of kicking about the idea. It didn't have anything to do with any of the Depp controversy. Amber Heard had been saying that because of Johnny Depp's um, suing her for defamation, that Warner Brothers have kind of shit the bed and decided to fire her because of it or cut her down
nicely
from the
done.
movie.
Nicely done.
Walter Hamada was saying that's not the case. She was always going to have either a cut down role or be fired. And then apparently Elon Musk stepped in, said, "Don't do that. Otherwise, I'm going to write nasty things about you and bring the whole studio crashing down."
Oh, they're doing that
Whatever you
themselves.
think about that. Yeah, weird way to go about it. But Jason Momoa, basically, he was trying to get her fired the entire time. She said he was showing up drunk, and apparently he was also dressing like
I feel
Johnny
like
Depp
he
to annoy
already
her.
kind of dresses like Johnny Depp, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Like, and there's a lot of times where he's like posing with beer in his hands. He likes to drink, so it just doesn't.
yeah,
To me, it doesn't. I have no idea. I'm not on set. I don't know the specifics of the story. It's
mm,
but I'm saying that when I hear that, my first thought is, doesn't he always kind of dress like Johnny Depp? And doesn't he? People already know the guy likes to drink. So I don't know if it has
yeah.
specific. I mean, showing up drunk on set is not a good thing. I guess my question is it really just to antagonize Amber Heard? I'm not defending him. I'm just more questioning if it is.
Yeah. Well, people say I dress like Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy
Totally.
Volume 2 to try and annoy
Oh,
you, but
totally.
I don't see that
Oh my
myself.
God, you do.
But yeah,
Spitting image.
the way that the studios kind of went, no, not the studios, the way the media went with it was that it's like Jason Momoa shows up drunk on the set of Aquaman dressed as Johnny Depp to try and get Amber Heard fired. And it's like, well, no, these are actually statements that Amber Heard's
Yeah.
made to her therapist. There's two sides to every story. And Jason Momoa's reps have declined to comment, but a DC spokesperson pushed back on the characterization and said Jason Momoa conducted himself in a professional manner at all times on the set. Jason works his ass off, likes to have a beer once in a while, like everyone, but he doesn't show up to the set drunk. Heard declined to comment, and yeah, it's just a complete disaster,
Can't wait,
really. I
man.
mean, imagine trying to promote a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to promote a movie where you're like Aquaman and Mira, they're in love, they've got a family, but it's all going to get brought crashing down by Black Manta. It's like, mate, Black Manta don't even need to show up to destroy this family. It's like, it's over. That we know the actors hate each other. It's a
Can't
disaster.
wait.
And just for the fact that they're going with the strategy again of none of this shit matters, mate. Don't worry about seeing this movie
Yeah.
because we're rebooting it soon. Yeah, just not a good thing to happen before a film is due to release, and we've still got months left before it comes out. And
Well,
Just another disaster for DC. It's a complete disaster.
Well, I was hearing from Jeff Snyder, who has the Hot Mike and Snyder podcast, and a lot of his scoops tend to be correct. Like he's one of those people who, but like, I'm sure he's wrong once in a while. Whatever, everyone is. But in terms of the scoop business, he tends to be really good. He's got a good track record. And he was saying that, yeah, Jason Momoa is going to be Lobo. They were as talks about him, trying to get a cameo or an appearance in Superman Legacy, potentially set him up for a solo film. And the prediction is that they're going to announce that he's Lobo in February or March, which to me is not a good idea still. Like, it seems inevitable. I'd be very surprised if Aquaman 2 does well. At this point, I'd be surprised. I'm not saying it's for sure going to flop. It just seems likely it's not going to do well. And to go off of a flop and then immediately go, hey, we're bringing back Jason Momoa, is going to be a different. I don't feel like doing it so soon after. If they do decide to do it, I think they should hold off longer to announce it. Everyone's already kind of speculating on it. You got to let that desire simmer to see.
Deny. Get the denials in. Have Jason Momoa go, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Get people begging for him to come back. You know what I mean? Get people begging.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to build it up. You got to get the anticipation going, sizzle it, and then announce it. But if you announce it like following a disaster, I don't think that's the way to get people excited about Jason Momoa joining the DC universe. And if anything, I feel like that might just lead to more, negative speculation and negative rumors. And like, yeah, Jason Momoa wanted this to fail or some bullshit. Like I have no idea what it can open the door for, but I don't think it's a good idea to announce it so soon. It seems inevitable he's going to be a Lobo, but I feel like they should hold off longer.
Yeah, but I was actually glad to hear that they're going with an all-new Justice League lineup. I get called a Snyder shill all the time. I get called a James Gunn hater all the time, but I do think that they need to just take as much attention away from being connected to this universe as possible. Let's be honest, guys, it hasn't been well managed. It hasn't been well run. And I think James Gunn, he I don't like the way that he's announcing stuff in advance when he doesn't need to, but I think this is the right direction to take things, where you're getting a whole new Justice League lineup. You're severing the attachments to it, and you're keeping some things, but not necessarily leaning into them that much. Like Blue Beetle, I know we're getting told he's being kept, but I just feel like they saw the box office and stuff and were like, well, we'll get him in a team up movie. I enjoyed Blue Beetle, really liked Sholo's performance. But I feel like they need to more build him up amongst the other heroes to kind of prop him up and be like, look, this is a new guy. He's standing shoulder to shoulder with these giants. Pay attention to him. And I think the way they're doing it at the moment is, once they get past Aquaman 2, I think it's going to be sunlit uplands, as we say in the UK. And yeah, they've got the potential there to do something special. I think if they just sever this and go, yep, we were telling you need to watch it, but it was all PR, baby. We're back. New Justice League casting announcements. We've got, I don't know, John Hamm is an older Batman, and his kid is played by Timothy Oliphant, or not Timothy Oliphant. Timothy Chalamet. That would be weird if it was. Yeah. It's because I was listening to that.
You're going Chalamet. I know where
Marvel
you're going.
Podcast today. Yeah. And they were saying that Timothy Oliphant was initially really far along in terms of Iron Man casting, and then at the last second they decided to go with Robert Downey Jr. instead.
I also heard, to put this to rest, I heard that that the WB might be selling again. That it might go through
to
Universal, and then you get new leadership, and then they might just get James Gunn's DC universe if it's not panning out well. We might just get yet another announcement, another reboot. So I can't, like, WB's getting tossed around, man. It's whoring. WB's just whoring itself around to every studio out there. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of nuts what's going on with them.
it's just all been mismanagement from the start. They just didn't have a clear direction. Even stuff that's been coming out where it was like Zack Snyder was sort of going to make his own trilogy, and it was when they realized how well Marvel were doing with this connected universe, they were basically like, Zack, you need to make a connected universe. You can't just have these characters off on their own. So I can't remember where I heard it. It was someone who is actually connected to these films. I think it might have been David S. Goyer, but he was talking about how, just in the same way that Nolan made his own Batman trilogy, Snyder was going to do his own thing where it was just going to be self-contained, and then he kind of got forced onto a path of, you have to make a plan for a cinematic universe because you're the person who's kind of holding the hot potato at the moment when we're trying to do this thing. So yeah, it's just been kind of mismanagement from the start, and I think, the article itself, it has the perfect quote, which is, everyone's down on DC, but the quote kind of goes off, but there is a chance, especially with the limited competition during the holiday season, that Aquaman could still play gangbusters because of lack of product, which I disagree with. I think, I think they've kind of shot themselves in the foot. And the PR, I believe the PR is going to get worse as we get closer to the film, because everyone's sitting on those hot scoops, those big stories that they just want to drop. And say, Jason Momoa goes out and does the press for it, and Amber Heard's not there, it's just going to start so many rumors, and people are just going to jump on it for clicks, like we will.
Oh my God, I can't wait. Yeah, it's going to be a time for profit at the Heavy Spoilers podcast. Well, I think you were you transitioning us?
Maybe. Huh. I guess we were. I was coughing away with my mic muted, so the guys didn't have to listen to it.
Oh.
But you're right.
Oh my God.
The SAG, AFTRA, and AMPTP, those negotiations have hit a snag. The studios don't think it's reasonable for the actors to get 2% of the streaming revenue, and there's no agreement yet on the use of AI. And that comes from the LA Times. So not very good. We stupidly said last week, Greg,
it'll be over.
Well, they've got the deal. Yeah. I don't think it's good negotiation, yeah. If you're negotiating with two parties, I personally don't think it's to go to one and be like, yeah, we'll give you everything you want, mate. Whatever you want, we're at your mercy. Have everything. Have even more. And then go to the next people and be like, oh, you know what? Can't do it, mate. Sorry, I'm gonna have to reject the deal. So what apparently that the deal they brought to the table is actually worse than the first deal they took to the table months ago, which is it's a very bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them. So stuff's been really kicking off. The Hollywood Labour, they've released a joint statement supporting SAG, and they've basically called on the studios to resume negotiations. And yeah, SAG have revealed that the CEOs have refused to do it and won't offer any counter offers in terms of the last one they got. So what are you playing at? You literally had everything. You had the ball rolling.
Dude, I think
what you're talking about, what you're doing.
I think they know exactly what they're doing. Like, just think about the trajectory of everything. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here for a second, because it just kind of makes sense to me. All right, I'm admitting this is all a little conspiracy Gregory right here. First thing they agreed with that they got done before everything was, like, the directors didn't even have to go on strike. They got to deal with the directors. So that makes it look like, hey, we're willing to play ball, right? And then the writer's strike happens. Same thing. We're not meeting. The hell with you guys. We're just going to bounce in the middle of this meeting. I don't like what you're asking for. There's no way in hell you're going to get this. And then they come back eventually, and then the writers end up getting more of what they want. And that's kind of what's been happening with SAG. Same thing, right? And a big part of me has been like, they've been having flop after flop. They need shit to be canceled. At the end of the day, when after all the strikes are done, they can get back to filming, and things they have to can or remove, they could blame a lot of failures on the strike situation, get people out of contract. Because a lot of times when you agree to all these countless TV shows you're doing and movies, you got sequel bargains and sequel deals or season renewals on hand, all this shit that you can now get out of. You can can a lot of things from this, and they're able to save themselves a lot of money. So right now, with buying some time, they could have the writers be writing while it does cost them some stuff, they could also be saving some money simultaneously on this. And it's all a big bargain strategy to me. So part of me is like, I think this is like they have a pattern here. What AMPTP does, there's a pattern to how they're doing it.
Stupidity.
It's silly. It's stupid. But I feel like there's a long con here. There's a feeling of subterfuge.
No, because they agree to everything that they say. They give them everything they want eventually.
There's a reason why there's a delay, though.
They're completely fucked.
I feel like there's a reason why they prolong this delay because it allows them to see. What's up?
I thought that, but then I realized, no, they were in the middle of shooting so many projects that they then had to stop. And like Deadpool 3, they were in the middle of shooting that. Yeah, there's so many projects that they were in the middle of shooting that they could just get back to shooting. They don't need the writers on them. And instead, they're going to have a backlog of stuff because they've delayed this shit so much. When they are going to agree, it's like, good luck making movies without the actors, guys. You really thinking this one through. I don't think they realize they're fucked, right? They have nothing to bring to the table, really, other than dragging this thing out. Let's be honest, they will just agree to their terms eventually.
Where I think because I think what they asked for, because like you're right, like that's the other side of it. I have two feelings to it. One feeling is conspiracy. Greg is like, I feel like there's something bigger here where they're saving some money somehow. And the other side is, but for the information we get, they're also losing money, right? Because they're putting these productions on hold and they have to pay the cost for all that shit. And they could be making these. So I have like two feelings about it, and I don't know which way to fully lean. So to my understanding, they asked for something in regards to the residuals. I don't know the exact number when it came to the streaming of like 50 something cents per subscriber. So the idea was that
was it $1 per subscriber?
Oh, was it? Was it $1? Okay. Then whatever that amount is, that would go to SAG, and then SAG would be the ones who would divvy it up. It's not like every person gets that amount of money, like they would find the way to divvy it up. And that was their way of proposing something to allow some form of residual, because they got to figure out the residual game in some capacity. They just have to figure it out. So that was what they proposed. Now, a lot of people obviously are like, that's a ridiculous ask. And to ask it so late into negotiations, what a bullshit thing to do. So late into negotiations to ask for something. Well, the whole point is to negotiate, though. The whole point is to bargain. The whole point is to discuss and go, okay, well then counter offer. What do you propose in return as well? I don't know what these meetings are. I don't know how heated it's getting in these rooms where the talk is that the AMPTP members are like, I'm out of here, and they just like storm out. That they should be there discussing, dishing it out, even if it's getting heated. You should be talking it out and having counter offers going. Even if you don't like that offer, even if we don't like that offer, I'm not saying I do or not. I don't know what the right number is for this shit. But if it's not good, there has to be a counter, because you have to find some type of agreement and commonality on this particular issue. I think the AI thing, I don't feel like that's ever I don't think actors will ever concede to something like that. I think that's just way too, that's a big ask. And I feel like there's a dangerous terrain there. And I don't feel like the actors will ever concede to that. The residuals, though, it's become way too apparent that actors don't get like jack shit when it comes to residuals. And when a lot of shows get a second life on streaming, or when a lot of shows find their life on streaming, like Breaking Bad, it's the third time bringing this up, they don't get anything from it. And I think
Suits is like the biggest streaming show in the world now. And how long ago did that finish? And it's just constantly, if you look at any of the Nielsen charts, Suits is at the top at the moment, and it's got to the point where they're talking about doing a revival. Now, do they then give the residuals to the actors? They're like, no, we paid you on the day, mate. I know we agree to stuff in the contract, but the model's changed now with streaming. Go sod yourself.
Yeah, I don't know what it would. I don't know what the answer would be, but the answer is not getting mad and leaving. Like, that's not the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes
when it's like talks break down and negotiations have ceased, I would just say, look, cool down, mate. Come back tomorrow. We'll sort it out. Yeah, just have a think on it overnight. Talks don't need to break down. just please, we'll come back and we'll sort it, because remember, we're all trying to pull in the same direction and get movies and stuff made for profit. I just can't see the actors backing down at all. I think the studio has shown with the writers that they will eventually just agree to the terms if they drag it out long enough. And I know the studios were like, well, we'll just keep doing it until they lose their houses. Like, you're a piece of shit, mate, for saying that, and you're never going to seem like the good guy in this situation. And all it's going to do is embolden the people against you to last you out even longer. They're getting donations from big actors. The Rock, I know he donated a lot of money. There's been so many things in their cause to kind of keep them afloat. And I think the studios just see it as a short-term profit thing, where it's like, well, we'll do this in the short, like, we'll deny these terms because short-term we're going to make a lot of money. Whereas I think the actors see it as fighting for the future of the profession
Definitely.
and the
They
industry.
are.
If they sign over to this AI thing, boom, that's a lot of people's careers
That's
fucked,
dangerous stuff.
completely destroyed. Exactly, and that's why I don't think they're going to concede, because it's
No, they
bigger
should.
than the strikes. Whereas the studio don't see it as that; they just see it as like, we want to make money the next 3 years when we've got this contract in place. It's bigger for the actors than it is for the studio, and that's why they're not going to back down.
Yeah, I agree. It's too bad. And I think the main thing too that a lot of people want to talk about is like they haven't had a minimum wage increase in forever, and they they really I think they might have agreed to something already on that. That's a really important aspect for actors as well. Like I think what they're asking for it to be increased to is just $1,350 per day. I think that's the exact number. I might have remembered that correctly. 1350 per day. So when you think
Yep.
about it, like how much time do actors spend? Like there's like over or close to like 200,000 people or something like 150,000 people in SAG, and most of them are like don't work consistently, and a lot of them have to spend a lot of money on drive time and gas and going to auditions and headshots. They already put down like a lot of money, and then that 1350 usually have to give like 25% on average away for agent and manager fees on top of all that. So they're asking for a bigger minimum wage increase, as they deserve to, because it's been like a couple of decades or something to that effect. And I hope they do get that. I think like I said, like I don't know if the residual asset they put down for the streaming thing was the right call. However, there needs to be something, and they need and AMPTP needs to offer something that is workable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you
Mhm.
negotiate. It's kind of like you need to come to the table and be like, look, we know you're asking for this. Here's the terms we'll meet you on. We feel strongly that we can do that and we can work together on that. Maybe some things, we're going to have to talk about and see if we can kind of come to an agreement on it. But saying that as well, you've already shot yourself in the foot because you agreed to everything with the writers. So your negotiation power, you don't have it as much anymore, because it's like, well, why could you agree to that but not this? And I think the actors will just, drag things out, and that residual thing. Maybe I think the AI thing is something they will get the studios to agree to, because they'll hit a point where it's like, well, you're going to kill the entire acting profession because you're just going to have like there was that viral clip this week of the CGI crowd in that TV show, and it just looked so bad. And yeah, I think I mean we get accused of both sidesing it sometimes, but I think we've made our position pretty clear. Like, we do try and at least see things from both sides, but we also definitely have a favorite one that we always tend to side
we're
with.
siding with
So yeah,
one, I would say. Yeah.
yeah, we're trying to see it from your point of view, mate. We get it. Yeah, there's money involved. It's stressful for everyone. I think people, last time I said I can imagine it's stressful for everyone involved, I got a lot of backlash for saying that. But I mean, we are clearly siding with the actors. But it's I'm both sides
Do
in it
it.
again. We'll just move on. We'll
No,
move
you
on.
should.
So yeah,
You
next.
should, man.
No, it's important to read feedback and understand when you're being a dickhead. So I want to thank you guys for commenting. And while you're down in the comments, if you could either hit the like button, just maybe not hit the dislike, but move over to the subscribe button and hit that as well. So speaking of tired out old things in Hollywood, Halloween,
Woo!
the rights to it have been bought by Miramax, and
Yay.
apparently there's a new cinematic universe with Michael
I was
Myers.
really hoping A24 would get it. I was really hoping A24 would
me
get
too.
it. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they could do something
But to
weird.
be honest, I think it's for the best that they didn't, because they are actually creative. And I think once they start making that Halloween money, they might go into the old Hollywood mindset of like, well,
Commercial.
old IPs actually make us way more money
Yeah.
than greenlighting indie original scripts. Let's do that instead. So maybe it's for the best that they didn't win it, because, you know, they're probably not going to see that as a successful model in anytime soon anyway. So they might stick to the old ways that have been working for them well, which is brand new scripts, original properties, and you know that's what A24 has built itself off of. I kind of feel like we should have listened to Laurie Strode all those times that she taught us. You know, Michael, it keeps coming back, and it's like, yeah, even though you put him in a meat grinder last time, he still keeps popping up. And I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis is just going to be sat in a room in the next movie at like 90 years old or whatever. She's not that old, but she's going to be sat there going, I try to warn you, Michael will come back. It's like, yeah, we know, we've seen all the reboots and the sequels, love. We know he constantly comes back. Even though he's dead, there's still studios being like, man, if only there was a way to come up with a generic Hollywood slasher film starring a guy with a white mask. But we can't come up with it. We'll have to buy the rights to Halloween.
It's too soon, man. Too soon for this Halloween shit. Too soon. That's my main takeaway.
With it being a reboot. Yeah, with it being a reboot again, I mean, we just finished the last reboot of Halloween. We don't need another fucking reboot. There's been so many different timelines. I've been working on a big Halloween breakdown for the original film, and I'm really proud of the video. But one of the funniest things I found when researching it was John Carpenter said that he didn't think that the reason he didn't do the sequels is because he didn't think there was any room to tell a sequel, and the story had kind of run out. He was like, boy, was I wrong. It's like, yeah, because the amount of shit they've milked from this is absolutely insane. Like, I like the Halloween movies as much as anyone else, but not exactly groundbreaking at this point to just have the guy show up to Haddonfield and kill people and then get beaten at the end and disappear into the night. So yeah, obviously Miramax must see the value in that. I think announcing a cinematic universe again before you've even made the first film, you just put
Halloween cinematic universe. What is that supposed to be? Yeah. Unless you have like multiple IPs, you can. I mean, who do Miramax own? Do they own people I'm not aware of right now? I mean, can you cross them over with other people?
Yeah, maybe they do a Scream crossover or
something. Do they own Scream?
But you don't need to.
I think they own Scream. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a massive slasher fan, to be honest. I enjoy them in small doses. I prefer a more psychological thriller horror sort of thing.
I love the Scream franchise.
But yeah, so
I really love the Scream.
Yeah, so Scream, the first three were distributed by Miramax. So maybe they're kind of seeing it as that. They can kind of get back into the slasher genre. I mean, Scream's had a big reboot, and that's came back successful.
They have Hellraiser. They have Don't Breathe. They can. There's probably something cool they can do, I imagine. But I don't know what the Halloween cinematic universe is, because it seems that whenever you stray away from Michael Myers, it doesn't go over well with audiences. Like Season of the Witch,
maybe
Season of the Witch has had a lot of it's developed a cult following. Like there's a lot more love for it, and understandably so. And I think the problem was they made that a part 3, you know, and instead, like, you don't just go 1, 2, and then let's just really try to change the formula. And so they did that. And then, I mean, Halloween, what was the last one? Ends? Halloween Ends, very divisive. I really didn't like it. I know a lot of people really love what they did with it, and I loathed that film. I really didn't like it. And I've heard like some wonderful video essays on Halloween Ends of people who are very much pro for it, and I'm like, oh, so I can at least definitely see why people would really like that film. At the end of the day, though, I feel like it did not go over that well with people. So, yeah, and that was one where they really deviated from a true Michael Myers story. I know it's up for debate, but at the end of the day, he's barely in the film. I don't know what they would do here that could really make it fresh. They tried remaking it with Rob Zombie. That didn't go over that well, even though I actually kind of enjoy that first one.
No, the first one did. It was kind of the second where it fell apart.
Second was like a wild, just mean film. I walked out of the second one the first time I saw it. I was like 20 minutes into it. Once he started eating a dog, I realized like I don't really want to watch this movie right now. I eventually put it on at home and like back and then finish it, but that was one of the few movies I walked out of.
Well, he eats a dog in the original,
but you don't see him eat the dog. Like it was just so not a movie I was in the mood for when I was watching it the second time. When I was watching part 2 in the theaters, I was like, this is just so mean, and none of this is like enjoyable at all. And now he's eating a dog, and I'm like, I just don't want to be in the theater right now. Eventually finished it. I was like, I'll eventually watch it. But I don't know. I like the Halloween franchise. I just think that if you're gonna do a cinematic universe, I don't know what the hell that means. What other characters have really? What are you gonna do? A Doctor? What's Loomis? You're gonna do a Loomis movie?
Yeah,
an origin tale of Loomis. Like, what are you gonna do that would make an intriguing universe? But I love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong.
Yeah. I feel the Halloween franchise has run its course at this point. I think we've had enough reboots, remakes, and sequels to the point where you kind of, it's run its course. Whatever ending to the Michael Myers franchise you want, it's out there, I'm guessing. I wasn't a fan of Halloween Ends either. I actually really liked Halloween Kills. I thought it was just nice, over the top, bloody, had some good flashback stuff. Yeah, all that. Well, I wasn't taking it seriously, but I enjoyed watching it. And yeah, it's kind of. I feel like it's kind of run its course to be starting again. I mean, I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis is so attached to the franchise as well that they're gonna have to bring her back. But it's almost like, how many times is she gonna go through this and reboot the character and revitalize it? It's kind of run its course at the moment, and I just don't see how they're going to build this into a cinematic universe where people still care, because we've all seen all the different Halloween reboots, and yeah, like you said before, I think it's too close to start again and have people still care about it, because we always get let down by them. There's always a good first film in that reboot, and then they kind of limp along, might make a good one, and then interest slowly declines over time.
I love the 2018
now, speaking
one.
of that,
I love that 2018. I would say I love that one. I really love it.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
When they buy the rights to this stuff, they tend to have a really good first idea of how they're going to use it and utilize it, but they don't necessarily have things mapped out to the point where it's like, we're going to make so many bangers in this franchise. It's only like, we'll make one good one, and then it's like, oh crap, we need to follow it with a sequel. What the hell we're going to do? And yeah, that's kind of where the quality tends to fall down. But I like Kills. I know people don't, but I would much rather watch that over Halloween Ends. And our last story is
whoa, we are not ending until you let me talk about Taylor. So this is the last story, but not the last topic. I'm forcing this in here, Paul.
I'll just stop recording.
Nope.
Yeah. So yeah, Warwick Davis, he's said, I meet lovely people on a daily basis who are fans of #Willow, who are the reason the Disney Plus series was made. Don't think it was necessarily that, mate. I think Disney's kind of defunct of ideas, and they're just the snake eating their own tail at the moment, and they're looking at any IP they've got and greenlighting it. But we'll move on. Please tell me, he's tagged them in it, please tell me at Walt Disney Co., what do I say to these subscribers when they ask why they can't watch the series anymore? #embarrassing. So in case you guys don't know, there was a Willow series greenlit, dropped on Disney Plus. 6 months later, they took it off the platform, and you can't watch it again unless you know some people who move in certain circles, or you've got a link to a website where you might be able to see certain TV series for free. What's your thoughts on this, Greg? Because you actually got a lot of backlash to it.
You got backlash to this?
This is because you made it. We're just saying, like, yeah, because you made a crap show, and that's why they took it off.
Oh, fuck that!
And I feel bad for the guy.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
no,
it's not.
No, hell with that. I didn't watch it. I've heard it was bad.
I didn't watch it.
But I think I think people put a lot of their heart and soul and really work their asses. Bottom line is people work their asses off to put this together. And at the end of the day, it did have a fan base.
Yeah.
Even if the fan base wasn't large, it did have a fan base. And
some people will like it. There'll be people out there who like it. I mean, even if like 90% of the audience hate it, you know, that 10% that enjoyed it, why can't they just have this thing? I don't understand the maths between how it's cheaper. It works out better financially to write a show, cast it, film it, do all the post-process stuff like editing it, promote it on a platform, market it, and then pull it. I don't understand why they're pulling it. That makes sense, no sense. Money-wise. I don't understand that part. Why? Yeah, why? I mean, there must be an accountant out there who's like, look, mate, I know you've spent these hundreds of millions of dollars, but the cleverest thing to do is actually not show it to anyone, because they're doing that with other series as well, where they've finished the entire thing. They're like, nope, just cheaper to not release it. It makes more sense to not release it and make any money back. So yeah, it felt kind of bad for the guy, but I think it just speaks to the state of streaming at the moment and how everything's sort of content. And if it doesn't do well, mate, it's off the platform. I mean, how much do those servers cost a day to run? 20 pence? It's too expensive. It
doesn't even give it an opportunity to like obtain a fan base one day, you know, when you just do that. Like maybe it didn't get it now, but who knows? It could have possibly grown or something. Like, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is people put their work into that as a lot. It wasn't just like a one-off thing, you know. It's like multiple episodes. There's a lot of creativity and a lot of hard work put into that from countless people. So many people to just bring a few hours to life, and to just excise it like that. I think it's to not really give an answer as to why. I think is really it allows no real. You know, what's the word when you're like want to break closure? That was the real closure to the situation. And I think having closure would help, at least with the creatives and for like Warwick Davis as well. I think no, I don't agree with this whole like it's because your show sucks thing. I'm like, even if it does, even if you think that, there are people who watch.
If your mentality is, well, that show is shit and it was woke and I hated it, so I'm glad they got rid of it. Let's pretend it's not Willow. Let's pretend it's a show you really like, you personally really like, and then you just found out from the creator. You went out to go watch it. They've just pulled it down. You see what I'm saying? You've got to. It's not just Willow. We're not just talking about Willow. It's the practice in general of just removing shows. Yeah, exactly. So don't think about it being Willow that you hate. Think about it being a show that you like, and then you'll see where it kind of falls down. And don't also be like, I only like good shows. There will be some stuff in there, mate, that you like that's shit. We all have those shows that are absolutely shit, and it's like, man, I can't stop watching Married at First Sight every week. Yeah. What do you mean they've taken it down? I need to find out what happened. So yeah, that's the stories, guys. We're ending there. There's nothing else to talk about this week.
I've told too many people on social media I'm doing it on the podcast. It's my way of driving traffic to here, Paul. I am going to do this. You're going to let me ramble. Monologue. I'm ready. I'm going to go for it. Try not to fall asleep, Paul. That's your challenge.
Doesn't sound like you're ready.
That's your challenge for today. All righty, guys. So here's where it all began. The Taylor Swift Eras Tour. It is the #1 movie in the world right now. #1 experience. I'm going to backtrack to this for a little bit of how I discovered Taylor Swift. I've always admired her. Like, my wife is obsessed with her. I've always admired her, but I was never really into her music. I'm one of those guys who's always had like a wall up against whenever I would try to listen to her. Like, whenever I put her on, it would be that kind of thing, you know, when someone overhypes a movie or a show and you're just sort of waiting around like, all right, when's this going to be amazing? When's this going to be great? When am I going to love this? And because I was just constantly waiting for that feeling, I just never would listen to her, and I never really got into her. But I've always admired her because I know she writes most of her songs, maybe all, but at least most of her songs. And I found this out after watching the Eras Tour, that she actually directs most of her music videos as well. Like, she's a true creative. So I've always really thought her work ethic is amazing. So even if you like her music or not, can't deny her skill. So the like a couple weeks ago, whenever this was announced, I like surprise bought tickets for my wife. It was for Dolby Cinema, and it was so Dolby Cinema has like the best projection, and it has like the best sound. Maybe not the biggest size like IMAX, but it's got those essential ingredients when you're hearing like a 3-hour concert movie. But I still hadn't listened to any Taylor. So cut to like a couple weeks out of buying tickets. I'm at the gym. I'm working out. I'm doing my thing. And Spotify is doing its auto playlist thing of songs I've ever heard. And that's usually how I discover new songs. A song starts playing, and I'm like halfway through, and I'm like, oh, I'm really loving this song. So I go to add it to my liked playlist, and then lo and behold, you guessed it, it was a Taylor Swift song, and I had no idea I was listening to Taylor Swift. And I was like, oh,
What song was it?
oh my God. Hold on. Let me pull it right here. It's at the very, very top. It's from her album Reputation. It's so good. It's not actually at the Eras tour. It's I Did Something Bad is the name of the song. So I really loved it. And I texted my wife, like, you're not going to believe this. And so then I found on Spotify that they have the whole, I was like, okay, if I'm going to sit through 3 hours of this, I want to at least like know every song, because for me, when I go to a concert, I tend to enjoy them better if I actually know, at least have some familiarity with some of the songs. And so on the Eras tour, they have like the entire playlist. And so I was like, I'm just going to listen to all this for the next few days. And then I was like, all right, I think I'm starting to like Taylor Swift. I think I'm really coming around. Then I would find myself going, I really want to continue listening. Then I'd be like working on thumbnails and I'm listening to Taylor Swift. I'm like, I think I'm really getting into Taylor Swift. Go to the theater. And I did not know this until after. This is actually where the premiere, we're at the screen where she actually premiered the movie. I didn't even know that. So I was like, oh, I had the perfect choice. So for you guys who don't know why this concert is a big deal, you would usually do, she's done a bunch of albums, and she would do like an album and then do a tour with that album being the title of that tour. And there was like a few-year period where she did like 5 albums, but she wasn't touring. She wasn't doing these live performances, these concert shows. So what she did was this mega event, the Eras Tour, where she just combined this like crazy thing where she just combined all 5 albums into one mega concert performance. And I was still like, I like Taylor Swift, but is this going to be, am I going to zone out? Am I going to be bored? The thing's almost 3 hours long. Am I going to be bored watching this? And I had never, even though I was listening to all of it, I had never actually even seen a Taylor Swift music video, and I never watched like some live performance video from her before. So this was my first experience to like watching her perform.
So you didn't even know her before she was cool. I feel like I like Taylor Swift more than you, Greg.
I did not know that.
You listen to her music.
Really?
We never go out. Style. I love Style. Banger.
Damn.
Bad Blood. Banger. I knew you were trouble when you walked in. Banger. Banger.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude.
What was the...
Oh, you got to go with your wife. All right. Look, I
say you'll remember me standing in a nice dress, looking at the sunset,
dude.
baby.
I thought you were going to be bored here. You should go watch this because the concert was. There was something really enchanting about it. It was like actually kind of magical because there's nothing like it. Like I took a little video of it, and like people from pretty much from beginning to end were dancing nonstop. And there's, how they have like stadium seating, and then like in front of the screen, people were like going down there and they were taking turns and just sort of dancing. And it wasn't distracting. It elevated the experience because a lot of people can't go to a Taylor Swift concert. And this is their way of getting to experience it, because a big part of it is the communal joy of getting to have this together. And as someone who has been to several concerts for stuff, I still would really love to, like, even if I had gone to the concert, I'd still want to go see it like my wife, because at a concert, you're at one spot and you don't get to hit all these like different vantage points of views and all these things that you would get through all these variety of camera angles. And to be able to experience this in a theater was something very, very unique. And I feel like a lot of people are, after this, there's going to be other musicians, other artists, maybe other bands who are going to be wanting to do this as well, because there's nothing quite like it for a theater going experience that I found myself really enjoying. And in terms of like Taylor Swift for her concert, what was so cool is she has such a vast variety of genre, vast variety of music, sounds, and they all ring authentic versus I never get the impression she's an artist trying something. It just seems true to her at that moment in time. And so there's a lot of different costume changes, a lot of different variety of music. And her ability to connect with audience and fans is like very, very mesmerizing, man. I really loved it. And I didn't think I was going to love it. I thought I would enjoy myself. But I wasn't expecting to really love it. And it's something that I have thought about repetitively throughout the day, like consistently since coming back from it. And then I find myself like watching interviews with her and whatnot. So I think what she's done is something kind of groundbreaking and will be something other people are going to try to emulate. And it's really, really, really impressive. I really love my experience with there. And I hope more people get to experience it. It's not the kind of thing you can just get from home. And on top of that, the last thing I want to say, the turnaround on this, because the concert was only a few months ago, the turnaround for the editing for this is remarkable because you've got to keep people freaking engaged for a 3-hour concert. It's not just a single shot, you're doing a variety of angles and whatever. You got to handle your transitions. And the editing, to get this editing down on a turnaround for a 3-hour show where you're combining 2 performances from LA and you got to make it look like one. Flawless. They did a flawless job on it. It was. I've become a Swiftie. That's what happened over the course of 4 weeks, Paul. I'm now a Swiftie.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've managed to do it and had the best time of your life in your wildest dreams. A lot of people would shake it off, but all you had to do was stay, and it really took you out of the woods into a kind of a blank space where you were clean. And I know places where you can get this love, and it's sort of how you get the girl in the end when you think about it, really.
Oh my God.
That's what I'd say. Shake it off, and I'll write your name. All you had to do was stay.
Have you heard the Midnight album?
The songs,
really,
Greg.
Her latest album. It's so good.
No, of course I have. I don't know the thing is, the way that I consume music now, I don't know any of the names of
That's
stuff.
my problem.
Whereas when I used to buy albums, I used to read the back and know the stuff. Whereas now I'll just be like, put on the album, and they'll play it, and I'll be like, no idea what this song's called, but I'll sing along to it.
That's exactly what
Alexa's
that's why I couldn't name
ruined
it, because I just let shit play, but I don't actually know what the title of the songs are all the time. So I would find myself like singing along, but I'm like, I don't know what the song's called.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we've still got people listening right now, so if you are, please don't leave us. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe. Check us out on Amazon Podcasts. Check us out on Spotify Podcasts. Check us out wherever. I'm absolutely over the moon, Greg. I've just had 2 big screeners hit the inbox. We've got the Gen V finale. We've got Invincible.
Whoa!
Living it up in the city. So very excited to see that. While you were talking about Taylor Swift, I was sitting going, Just pretend I'm listening when I'm trying to focus on this. But
that's usually what you do already when I'm talking generally about any topic. You're just like, when do we segue to the next topic?
I'm kind of flicking between 20 different tabs all at once to see what the big stories are. So please, Hollywood, don't drop any big bombshells on us tomorrow when this podcast releases. But thanks for listening to it, guys. We love you for all your support, and it really means a lot. And thanks a lot,
guys.
Any final words?
No, thank you guys for listening. Really enjoyed my time here and appreciate you guys' support. Share the podcast. Share it. I feel like we're getting better and better all the time. Share it.
Sort of.